Section 24. The Spring Running, Part 1. Man goes to man. Cry the challenge to the jungle. He that was our brother goes away. Hear now and judge, O ye people of the jungle. Answer, who shall turn him? Who shall stay? Man goes to man. He is weeping in the jungle. He that was our brother sorrows sore. Man goes to man. Oh, we loved him in the jungle, to the man trail where we may not follow more. The second year after the great fight with Red Dog and the death of Akela, Mowgli must have been nearly 17 years old. He looked older, for hard exercise, the best of good eating, and baths whenever he felt in the least hot or dusty, had given him strength and growth far beyond his age. He could swing by one hand from a top branch for half an hour at a time, when he had occasion to look along the tree roads. He could stop a young buck in mid-gallop and throw him sideways by the head. He could even jerk over the big, blue wild boars that lived in the marshes to the north. The jungle people who used to fear him for his wits now feared him for his strength, and when he moved quietly on his own affairs, the mere whisper of his coming cleared the wood paths. And yet the look in his eyes was always gentle. Even when he fought, his eyes never blazed as Bagheera's did. They only grew more and more interested and excited, and that was one of the things that Bagheera himself did not understand. He asked Mowgli about it, and the boy laughed and said, "When I miss the kill, I am angry. When I must go empty for 2 days, I am very angry. Do not my eyes talk then?" "The mouth is hungry," said Bagheera, "but the eyes say nothing. Hunting, eating, or swimming, it is all one, like a stone in wet or dry weather." Mowgli looked at him lazily from under his long eyelashes, and, as usual, the panther's head dropped. Bagheera knew his master. They were lying out far up the side of a hill overlooking the Waingunga, and the morning mist hung below them in bands of white and green. As the sun rose, it changed into bubbling seas of red gold, churned off and let the low rays stripe the dried grass on which Mowgli and Bagheera were resting. It was the end of the cold weather. The leaves in the trees looked worn and faded, and there was a dry, ticking rustle everywhere when the wind blew. A little leaf tap-tap-tapped furiously against a twig, as a single leaf caught in a current will. It roused Bagheera, for he snuffed the morning air with a deep, hollow cough, threw himself on his back, and struck with his forepaws at the nodding leaf above. "The year turns," he said. "The jungle goes forward. The time of new talk is near. That leaf knows. It is very good." "The grass is dry," Mowgli answered, pulling up a tuft. "Even Eye of the Spring, that is a little trumpet-shaped waxy red flower that runs in and out among the grasses, even Eye of the Spring is shut, and, Bagheera, is it well for the Black Panther so to lie on his back and beat with his paws in the air, as though he were a tree-cat?" "Oh?" said Bagheera. He seemed to be thinking of other things. "I say, is it well for the Black Panther so to mouth and cough and howl and roll? Remember, we be masters of the jungle, thou and I." "Indeed, yes, I hear, man-cub." Bagheera rolled over hurriedly and sat up, the dust on his ragged black flanks. He was just casting his winter coat. "We be surely the masters of the jungle. Who is so strong as Mowgli? Who so wise?" There was a curious drawl in the voice that made Mowgli turn to see whether by any chance the Black Panther were making fun of him, for the jungle is full of words that sound like one thing, but mean another. "I said we be beyond question the masters of the jungle," Bagheera repeated. "Have I done wrong?" "I did not know that the man-cub no longer lay upon the ground. Does he fly, then?" Mowgli sat with his elbows on his knees, looking out across the valley at the daylight. Somewhere down in the woods below, a bird was trying over, in a husky, reedy voice, the first few notes of his spring song. It was no more than a shadow of the liquid, tumbling call that would be pouring later, but Bagheera heard it. "I said the time of new talk is near," growled the panther, switching his tail. "I hear," Mowgli answered. "Bagheera, why dost thou shake all over? The sun is warm." "That is Ferraro, the scarlet woodpecker," said Bagheera. "He has not forgotten. Now I, too, must remember my song." And he began purring and crooning to himself, harking back dissatisfied again and again. "There is no game afoot," said Mowgli. "Little brother, are both thine ears stopped? That is no killing word, but my song that I make ready against the need. I'd forgotten. I shall know when the time of new talk is here, because then thou and the others shall run away and leave me alone." Mowgli spoke rather savagely. "But indeed, little brother," Bagheera began, "we do not always—" "I say ye do," said Mowgli, shooting out his forefinger angrily. "Ye do run away, and I, who am the master of the jungle, must needs walk alone. How was it last season, when I would gather sugar-cane from the fields of a Man-Pack? I sent a runner, I sent thee, to Hathi, bidding him to come upon such a night and pluck the sweet grass for me with his trunk." "He came only 2 nights later," said Bagheera, cowering a little, "and of that long sweet grass that pleased thee so he gathered more than any man-cub could eat in all the nights of the rains. That was no fault of mine. He did not come upon the night when I sent him the word. No, he was trumpeting and running and roaring through the valleys in the moonlight. His trail was like the trail of 3 elephants, for he would not hide among the trees. He danced in the moonlight before the houses of the Man-Pack. I saw him, and yet he would not come to me, and I am the master of the jungle." "It was the time of the new talk," said the Panther, always very humble. "Perhaps, little brother, thou didst not that time call him by a master-word? Listen to Ferraro, and be glad." Mowgli's bad temper seemed to have boiled itself away. He lay back with his head in his arms, his eyes shut. "I do not know, nor do I care," he said sleepily. "Let us sleep, Bagheera. My stomach is heavy in me. Make me a rest for my head." The Panther lay down again with a sigh, because he could hear Ferraro practicing and repracticing his song against the springtime of new talk, as they say. In an Indian jungle the seasons slide one into the other almost without division. There seem to be only 2, the wet and the dry. But if you look closely below the torrents of rain and the clouds of char and dust, you will find all 4 going round in their regular ring. Spring is the most wonderful, because she has not to cover a clean bare field with new leaves and flowers, but to drive before her and to put away the hanging-on, over-surviving raffle of half-green things which the gentle winter has suffered to live, and to make the partly dressed stale earth feel new and young once more. And this she does so well that there is no spring in the world like the jungle spring. There is one day when all things are tired, and the very smells, as they drift on the heavy air, are old and used. One cannot explain this, but it feels so. And then there is another day, to the eye nothing whatever has changed, when all the smells are new and delightful, and the whiskers of the jungle people quiver to their roots, and the winter hair comes away from their sides in long draggled locks. Then, perhaps, a little rain falls, and all the trees and the bushes and the bamboos and the mosses and the juicy leaf plants wake with the noise of growing that you can almost hear, and under this noise runs, day and night, a deep hum. That is the noise of the spring, a vibrating boom which is neither bees nor falling water nor the wind in the treetops, but the purring of the warm, happy world. Up to this year Mowgli had always delighted in the turn of the seasons. It was he who generally saw the first eye of the spring deep down among the grasses, and the first bank of spring clouds, which are like nothing else in the jungle. His voice could be heard in all sorts of wet, star-lighted, blossoming places, helping the big frogs through their courses, or mocking the little upside-down owls that hoot through the white nights. Like all his people, spring was the season he chose for his flittings, moving, for the mere joy of rushing through the warm air 30, 40, or 50 miles between twilight and the morning star, and coming back panting and laughing, wreathed with strange flowers. The 4 did not follow him on these wild ringings of the jungle, but went off to sing songs with other wolves. The jungle people are very busy in the spring, and Mowgli could hear them grunting and screaming and whistling according to their kind. Their voices then are different from their voices at other times of the year, and that is one of the reasons why spring in the jungle is called the time of new talk. But that spring, as he told Bagheera, his stomach was changed in him. Ever since the bamboo shoots turned spotty brown, he had been looking forward to the morning when the smell should change. But when the morning came, and Moor the peacock, blazing in bronze and blue and gold, cried it aloud all along the misty woods, and Mowgli opened his mouth to send on the cry, the words choked between his teeth, and a feeling came over him that began at his toes and ended in his hair, a feeling of pure unhappiness, so that he looked himself over to be sure that he had not trod on a thorn. Moor cried the new smells, the other birds took it over, and from the rocks by the Waingunga he heard Bagheera's hoarse scream, something between the scream of an eagle and the neighing of a horse. There was a yelling and scattering of bandalog in the new budding branches above, and there stood Mowgli, his chest filled to answer more, sinking in little gasps as the breath was driven out of it by this unhappiness. He stared all around him, but he could see no more than the mocking bandalog scudding through the trees, and more, his tail spread in full splendor, dancing on the slopes below. "The smells have changed," screamed More. "Good hunting, little brother. Where is thy answer?" "Little brother, good hunting," whistled Chill the Kite and his mate, swooping down together. The two baffed under Mowgli's nose so close that a pinch of downy white feathers brushed away. A light spring rain, elephant rain as they call it, drove across the jungle in a belt 1/2 a mile wide, left the new leaves wet and nodding behind, and died out in a double rainbow and a light roll of thunder. The spring hum broke out for a minute and was silent, but all the jungle folk seemed to be giving tongue at once, all except Mowgli. "I have eaten good food," he said to himself. "I have drunk good water. Nor does my throat burn and grow small, as it did when I bit the blue-spotted brute that the turtle said was clean food. But my stomach is heavy, and I have given very bad talk to Bagheera and the others, people of the jungle, and my people. Now, too, I am hot, and now I am cold, and now I am neither hot nor cold, but angry with that which I cannot see. Hoo-hoo! It is time to make a running. Tonight I will cross the ranges. Yes, I will make a spring running to the marshes of the north and back again. I have hunted too easily too long. The 4 shall come with me, for they grow as fat as white grubs." He called, but never one of the 4 answered. They were far beyond earshot, singing over the spring songs, the moon and sambar songs, with the wolves of the pack. For in the springtime the jungle people make very little difference between the day and the night. He gave the sharp barking note, but his only answer was the mocking meow of the little spotted tree cat, winding in and out among the branches for early birds' nests. At this he shook all over with rage and half drew his knife. Then he became very haughty, though there was no one to see him, and stalked severely down the hillside, chin up and eyebrows down. But never a single one of his people asked him a question, for they were all too busy with their own affairs. "Yes," said Mowgli to himself, though in his heart he knew that he had no reason. "Let the red dhole come from the Deccan, or the red flower dance among the bamboos, and all the jungle runs whining to Mowgli, calling him great elephant names. But now, because the eye of spring is red, and More, forsooth, must show his naked legs in some spring dance, the jungle goes mad as Tabaqui. By the bull that bought me, am I the master of the jungle, or am I not? Be silent! What do ye here?" A couple of young wolves of the pack were cantering down a path, looking for open ground in which to fight. You will remember that the law of the jungle forbids fighting where the pack can see. Their neck bristles were as stiff as wire, and they bayed furiously, crouching for the first grapple. Mowgli leaped forward, caught one outstretched throat in either hand, expecting to fling the creatures backwards, as he had often done in games or pack hunts. But he had never before interfered with a spring fight. The 2 leaped forward and dashed him aside, and without word to waste rolled over and over, close-locked. Mowgli was on his feet almost before he fell. His knife and his white teeth were bared, and at that minute he would have killed both for no reason but that they were fighting when he wished them to be quiet, although every wolf has full right under the law to fight. He danced round them with lowered shoulders and quivering hand, ready to send in a double blow when the first flurry of the scuffle should be over. But while he waited, the strength seemed to ebb from his body. The knife point lowered, and he sheathed the knife and watched. "I have surely eaten poison," he sighed at last. "Since I broke up the council with the Red Flower, since I killed Shere Khan, none of the pack could fling me aside. And these be only tail wolves of the packs, little hunters. My strength is gone from me, and presently I shall die. O Mowgli, why dost thou not kill them both?" The fight went on till one wolf ran away, and Mowgli was left alone on the torn and bloody ground, looking now at his knife, and now at his legs and arms, while the feeling of unhappiness he had never known before covered him as a water covers a log. He killed early that evening and ate but little, so as to be in good fettle for his spring running, and he ate alone because all the jungle people were away singing or fighting. It was a perfect white night, as they call it. All green things seemed to have made a month's growth since the morning. The branch that was yellow-leaved the day before dripped sap when Mowgli broke it. The mosses curled deep and warm over his feet. The young grass had no cutting edges, and all the voices of the jungle boomed like one deep harp string touched by the moon of new talk, who splashed her light full on rock and pool, slipped it between trunk and creeper, and sifted it through a million leaves. Forgetting his unhappiness, Mowgli sang aloud with pure delight as he settled into his stride. It was more like flying than anything else, for he had chosen the long, downward slope that leads to the northern marshes through the heart of the main jungle, where the springy ground deadened the fall of his feet. A man-taught man would have picked his way with many stumbles through the cheating moonlight, but Mowgli's muscles, trained by years of experience, bore him up as though he were a feather. When a rotten log or a hidden stone turned under his foot, he saved himself, never checking his pace, without effort and without thought. When he tired of ground going, he threw up his hands monkey fashion to the nearest creeper, and seemed to float rather than to climb up into the thin branches, whence he would follow a tree road till his mood changed, and he shot downward in a long leafy curve to the levels again. There were still hot hollows surrounded by wet rocks where he could hardly breathe for the heavy scents of the night flowers and the bloom along the creeper buds, dark avenues where the moonlight lay in belts as regular as checkered marbles in a church aisle, thickets where the wet young growth stood breast-high about him and threw its arms round his waist, and hilltops crowned with broken rock, where he leaped from stone to stone above the lairs of the frightened little foxes. He would hear, very faint and far off, the chug-drug of a boar sharpening his tusks on a bole, and would come across the great grey brute all alone, scribing and rending the bark of a tall tree, his mouth dripping with foam and his eyes blazing with fire. Or he would turn aside to the sound of clashing horns and hissing grunts, and dash past a couple of furious Sambur, staggering to and fro with lowered heads, striped with blood that showed black in the moonlight. Or at some rushing ford he would hear Jacala the crocodile bellowing like a bull, or disturb a twined knot of the poison people, but before they could strike he would be away and across the glistening shingle, and deep in the jungle again. So he ran, sometimes shouting, sometimes singing to himself, the happiest thing in all the jungle that night, till the smell of the flowers warned him that he was near the marshes, and those lay far beyond his farthest hunting grounds. Here again, a man-trained man would have sunk overhead in 3 strides, but Mowgli's feet had eyes in them, and they passed him from tussock to tussock and clump to quaking clump, without asking help from the eyes in his head. He ran out to the middle of the swamp, disturbing the duck as he ran, and sat down on a moss-coated tree trunk lapped in the black water. The marsh was awake all around him, for in the spring the bird people sleep very lightly, and companies of them were coming or going the night through. But no one took any notice of Mowgli sitting among the tall reeds humming songs without words, and looking at the soles of his hard brown feet in case of neglected thorns. All his unhappiness seemed to have been left behind in his own jungle, and he was just beginning a full-throat song when it came back again, 10 times worse than before. This time Mowgli was frightened. "It is here also," he said half aloud. "It has followed me," and he looked over his shoulder to see whether the "it" were not standing behind him. There is no one here. The night noises of the marsh went on, but never a bird or beast spoke to him, and the new feeling of misery grew. "I have surely eaten poison," he said in an awe-stricken voice. "It must be that carelessly I have eaten poison, and my strength is going from me. I was afraid, and yet it was not I that was afraid. Mowgli was afraid when the 2 wolves fought. Akela, or even Phao, would have silenced them, yet Mowgli was afraid. That is true sign I have eaten poison. But what do they care in the jungle? They sing and howl and fight and run in companies under the moon, and hi my, I am dying in the marshes of that poison which I have eaten." He was so sorry for himself that he nearly wept. "And after," he went on, "they will find me lying in the black water. Nay, I will go back to my own jungle, and I will die upon the Council Rock, and Bagheera, whom I love, if he is not screaming in the valley, Bagheera, perhaps, may watch by what is left for a little, lest Chil use me as he used Akela." A large, warm tear splashed down on his knee, and, miserable as he was, Mowgli felt happy that he was so miserable, if you can understand that upside-down sort of happiness. "As Chil the Kite used Akela," he repeated, "on the night I saved the pack from Red Dog." He was quiet for a little, thinking of the last words of the lone wolf, which you, of course, remember. Now Akela said to me many foolish things before he died, for when we die our stomachs change. He said, nonetheless, I am of the jungle. In his excitement, as he remembered the fight on Waingunga Bank, he shouted the last words aloud, and a wild buffalo cow among the reeds sprang to her knees, snorting, "Man!" "Ugh!" said Misa, the wild buffalo. Mowgli could hear him turn in his wallow. "That is no man. It is only the hairless wolf of the Seeonee pack. On such nights runs he to and fro." "Ugh!" said the cow, dropping her head again to graze. "I thought it was man." "I say no." "Oh, Mowgli, is it danger?" lowed Misa. "Oh, Mowgli, is it danger?" the boy called back mockingly. "That is all Misa thinks for? Is it danger? But for Mowgli, who goes to and fro in the jungle by night, watching, what do ye care?" "How loud he cries!" said the cow. "Thus do they cry," Misa answered contemptuously, "who, having torn up the grass, know not how to eat it." "For less than this," Mowgli groaned to himself, "for less than this even last rains I had pricked Misa out of his wallow, and ridden him through the swamp on a rush halter." He stretched a hand to break one of the feathery reeds, but drew it back with a sigh. Misa went on steadily chewing the cud, and the long grass ripped where the cow grazed. "I will not die here," he said angrily. "Misa, one who is of one blood with the Jacala and the pig, would see me. Let us go beyond the swamp and see what comes. Never have I run such a spring running, hot and cold together. Up, Mowgli!" He could not resist the temptation of stealing across the reeds to Misa and pricking him with the point of his knife. The great dripping bull broke out of his hollow like a shell exploding, while Mowgli laughed till he sat down. "Say now that the hairless wolf of the Seeonee pack once herded thee, Misa," he called. "Wolf! Thou?" the bull snorted, stamping in the mud. "All the jungle knowst thou wast a herder of tame cattle. Such a man's brat as shouts in the dust by the crops yonder. Thou of the jungle? What hunter would have crawled like a snake among the leeches, and for a muddy jest, a jackal's jest, have shamed me before my cow? Come to firm ground, and I will... Misa frothed at the mouth, for Misa has nearly the worst temper of anyone in the jungle. Mowgli watched him puff and blow with eyes that never changed. When he could make himself heard through the pattering mud, he said, "What man-pack lair here by the marshes, Misa? This is new jungle to me." "Go north, then," roared the angry bull, for Mowgli had pricked him rather sharply. "It was a naked cowherd's jest. Go and tell them at the village at the foot of the marsh." The man-pack do not love jungle tales. Nor do I think, Misa, that a scratch, more or less, on thy hide is any matter for a council. But I will go and look at this village. Yes, I will go. Softly now. It is not every night that the master of the jungle comes to herd thee. End of section 24. Read by Matthew J. Almeida.